Hello, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome to our second program. And we are having a few technical problems, but we'll try to overcome them. And thank you very much for those of you who are going to join us now, or those of you who will be joining us later. We've got our special guest Dalia Khodor. I've said it wrong again, haven't I, Dalia? Not. I've been practicing all day, honestly. There should be no shadda on the D. There shouldn't have been a double D. So we'll keep on smiling for a few people to join us. And we have some severe technical problems, but we won't let them hinder. The technical problems may be from me or my end. I am in Beirut. We have some winds and things hitting us. Perhaps that is causing a little bit of interference within our internet. Well, today we are very pleased on Pandemicus and our project of Bullet, which is three novels by Melvin Burgess, Peter Kalu, and myself, a triptych of novels which are being gamified by Falafel Games, for a Lebanese-based company. We're very honored. We had the CEO of Falafel Games last week. This week, we are delighted to have Dalia Khodor, who is she with us, who has been the person to visualize our characters for us. Now, it's new to me. It's new to many of us. It's new to Peter and Melvin, some of the stuff we're doing, but we are very pleased. We will also be joined by Leal Challa and Sam Mukaddam, two young people engaged in writing stories around games, and also, of course, our resident Peter Kalu. You may not see much of me, but I'll be there in the background. Dalia is a video game artist. She is an illustrator and she's a teacher. And very soon we will have Dalia explaining to us so that you can watch all the others. We are joined also by Leal, and we're also going to have Sam. And once we can work out how to do this, Sam will join us. He's the smiling one about to come on. And here we now have the eternal smile of Peter Kalu. Both me and Peter are the novelists, for those who may not know. And we will be in the background to coming and joining you in due time. But in the first few moments, if everyone will introduce themselves over and above what I've said. So, Peter.
Hi, yes, my name is Pete Kalu. I'm a novelist, scriptwriter, poet, radio play, deviser, and I have now entered into the world of creative gaming. It's been a roller coaster ride. I've been enjoying learning so many new things and meeting so many new people with great expertise, some of which I didn't even knew existed in the world. So I'm really enjoying this experience, and I hope that we go on this journey together and by the end deliver a fantastic game. That's me.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see all of you here. It's an honor, truly, to be speaking to you, Ms. Khodor, as well as you, Mr. Kalu. Thank you very much for Professor Mahmoud putting us all here together so we can discuss the brilliant world of gaming, as well as how we can transform narrative into games and the design that involves in that. I've seen some of your work, Ms. Khodor. You have a big fan in me, truly. And
Thank you.
Overall, I'm just really excited to get into the conversation and get it started.
Thank you very much. I'm honored, really, that you like my work. Thank you. Well, just like a short introduction about what I do. I'm a character designer, visual developer. I work for video games mostly, developing worlds, developing the visuals for the games, and usually there's lots of huge actually amount of background work that goes on when we're developing characters. So now in short, like shortly, I can just explain the process and a little bit about myself. Okay.
Leia.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen for the to show you guys some of my work.
Dalia, just while you sort that, should we just get a short intro from Leia?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I will get that sorted.
Okay,
Oh.
hello everyone. I would like to thank everyone for being here. Thank you, Ms. Khodor. Thank you, Mr. Kalu. Thank you, Professor Tariq, for organizing this. My name is Layal, and I'm 19 years old, and I'm very, very excited to have this conversation today. I'm actually minoring in gaming. I want to pursue a minor in gaming. So this conversation is really, really valuable to me, and I'm excited.
Oh, it's you, Dalia. I'm not sure if the person who is clicking the button behind this, Tariq, may intend for you to have the screens yourself at this point. But let us see. Let us proceed in this way, and we'll improvise.
Okay, now I can hear you. I've had some audio problems. Okay, now it's all good.
All right.
We're saying the floor is yours, Dalia. Take
Okay,
it away.
great. I've shared my screen. Is it showing from your end?
I think it is now.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so basically just another like quick introduction about what I do. As I said, visual developer, I create games. So I have provided some samples of what I do just so you could have more of an information about what exactly is character design and specified mostly for video games. To start with, I have worked on several projects, and one of the things that I enjoy the utmost is when I create a character. I really love to have personality and a story that is directly attached to this character. So when I'm designing any character, I always say like, what would this character be doing? How are they? How do they react in different situations? How would their movements as well change? So if you can see, like I also do character design sheets that would help in just forming or defining the idea of how a character could move throughout a game. And I have also done some personal work. You know, some of the shows that I watch, I've also tried to like develop them into characters, try to study a little bit about the expressions and the personality through this character. I also study lots of companions as well with the characters because it always makes it even more interesting, you know. And usually, characters also reflect the original person's personality. For example, like I once tried to have a companion, a pig companion, or a dog companion, a cat. So it all depends on the story. I also like to do lots of stylization when it comes to the poses and expression. So each character has his own way of moving. Some characters move very in a very stiff way, and some characters move very more lively and more, you know, action related. I also do some stories often. I create some stories, and the most part that I enjoy is, of course, like doing the actual character for the story. And I've also worked on preparing character designs or character sheets with notes, of course, for 3D artists. So later on, they can develop it into 3D, of course, for mobiles. And at some point, I have tried to explore a little bit the world of gaming, basically, because you know, in video games, you have different levels and you have different chapters. So I tried here to dive deeper into how would each level possibly in a video game look like, and of course, like including a story underneath it. Probably some visuals to show how would a game look like, how is it playable. Like for example, just a very short example here, like you could drive a boat simply from one island to another, And once you reach the island, you are free to move a character. So lots of different options you can explore. Now, these are kind of like an introduction about basically what I do in general. As I said before, it's all about a story. And recently, I've had the chance to work on the series of novels, which are a three-piece novel as well, which was really fun, by the way, because I always like when writers approach me and they tell me that they want to do a character, because writers are usually different from regular clients because they're usually more invested in the character, they know more personality, they know more details, and so on, so on. So it makes my job easier in a sense, because some client work, for example, they come to me and they tell me we want, you could say, like a strong character or a tough character that holds an axe. But then you ask them, who is this character? What does this character do? What is his mini life story in a sense? And they just tell me, I just want him to look cool in a sense. And this usually is more work for us, as character designers, because you're the ones who have to do the mood boards. You're the one who has to like try to look for inspiration. What could the client possibly have in mind? So when I started working with the writers of these series, it was just like a different thing. It
Mhm.
was more of an interactive conversation, if I might say so. So that is why we later on developed mood boards and the entire mood of the game.
Thank you, Dalia, for the fantastic introduction. I just first want to mention that the art style that you use, the stylistic mode of exaggerated emotion and posture, and the way the characters carry themselves, it's extremely unique and one that really resonates, I think, with me. And I think with a lot of people who enjoy video games that have that exact kind of art style, which nowadays is becoming more common. There's some cel shaded versions of that, 3D modeling versions of that. And what I would like to know, if you're okay with answering, is what drove you to gravitate towards that kind of art style? What about it is inherently interesting to you as opposed to photorealistic art styles or maybe something a bit more abstract?
Yeah. So very, very short life story that I
Okay.
have like a background. Um, well, most of the people that I'm friends with already know my huge obsession was mainly Disney
Uh-huh.
characters growing up. So watching Disney was kind of natural to me, and I still do. Like whatever animation, doesn't have to be Disney. Like any animation, I still watch it. And what's funny about this is I don't watch it for the story or the plot. I just watch it so I could look at the characters. How are they designed? What new things they have added to characters, and basically just learn. So growing up, being inspired by Disney and how they used to like push the limits of movement, like for example Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck. These characters that are not realistic, but when they're in pain or they get hurt, they're just like they get squished in a
Yeah.
sense. They become taller or bigger. So always pushing the boundaries in anatomy was kind of something that I really liked. And you usually feel more creative when you don't have limits to anatomy. So when you don't have limits, like my hand could not, for example, bend this way, and like I could break the laws of anatomy in a sense and just push the pose some more to give it more of an action. So this is always interesting in illustration, and it's always interesting in character designs, especially in video games. The more you have a stylized character, the more you have liberties in being creative with how you're designing the character.
That's brilliant. Thank you. On the topic of liberty, if you don't mind me asking, you mentioned that there was a large focus on jobs being so much easier when the person asking for a commission or asking for a character being designed gives you all the detail. He already tells you what the character's mannerisms are, what their role in the story is, and that makes your job easier. But on the
Yes.
same token, would that at all feel restrictive? Do you appreciate a level of liberty and personal actualization when you create the characters to the point where you may add your own twist to it, or would you rather it be exactly to the specifications of whoever is asking a character to be
Mhm.
designed?
Mhm. Yeah, well, when I get jobs or commissions similar to that, especially based on a story, a written story, it is, as I said, it is easier for me. I do try to avoid taking too much liberty when
Hmm.
I'm creating the character because I still believe in the, it might sound cliche, but I do believe in the spirit of the story and the spirit of the book. Uh, at the end of the day, it's not my job to change the spirit or the style of the story. I just have to translate it visually. And I take it as a really good thing because it's mostly a challenge to me.
Hmm.
I have a story. I might not be a fan of the genre, for example, but it's a big challenge for me. So I take that, like in a pretty fun perspective, especially that I have the background already ready and I have the stories as well already written. So it just makes it easier for me to know the direction. And when it comes to creative liberty, usually I do get a little bit of liberty. Like, for
Hmm.
example, you could choose the outfit or you could choose the accessories that this character is designed with. But at the same time, I personally do not like to stray away from the original spirit of the story or the original style of the story.
I see. Thank you.
Um, Building off on this topic, I want to ask you a question about the process of transforming these characters from words to illustrations. So, when you read about a character, do you directly envision them as like a real character, like I mean, realistic, as a realistic character, and then try to turn them into the art style that you pursue, which is like the cartoonish style, or does it directly go to the style that you write that you like to do?
Mm, mm. Yeah, when anyone briefs me on a character, I usually just directly imagine the shape at first. This is what's important to me. Like if I give a very quick example, it could be if we say a very strong character. So I directly imagine a silhouette that is like square shaped or rectangular shape. Something shapes that are very difficult, hard edged, something like this. And little by little, the more I read about the story, of course they talk about like the details of the outfits, the for example some features in the face that are important for the story, and I just try to fill it in inside the shape little by little until I get the complete character. But as a start, I do, yes, imagine the character in the style that I usually work in, and it depends on the brief. Some clients tell me they want a purely realistic character, and some clients tell me they want stylized characters. So it really differs in that matter. But when it comes to my process, I just imagine them in the style that I usually work in.
Okay, great. Thank you.
On that topic, actually, since we are discussing the character design, um, in Triptych, what about the characters in there you mentioned were very detailed and interesting to draw and design? Could you tell me any, at least maybe one per main character, so Axel, Dune, Maria, and so on?
Mm.
What about them? What maybe it is more about the narrative than it is about the characters, but either way, what property of the triptych of stories made it so appealing to actually take up the job and
Mm.
design for it?
Mm. Well, later on, I could show you the entire mood board that we
Hmm.
have created for this series. But what really caught my eye is that personally, I really love the post-apocalypse kind of worlds,
Hmm.
in a sense, where's every man for himself. Basically, they use not so many like technologically advanced weapons, in a sense. They all use what they have or what they're provided with, and that is something interesting creatively, because you have all of these objects in front of you that you're imagining. I mean, if I'm in a scenario between like life and death, post apocalypse even, I could use any object around me and use it for something, like
Yeah.
so I could survive. And these things usually they're fun, they're fun to come up with. I could, for example, see a street sign on the road and then think, if I'm in a post-apocalyptic situation, I could just, take that street sign off the ground and just use it, like a hammer or some weapon or a shield, maybe, or to cut things. You'll never know. Like, you have so
Mhm.
much creativity with everyday objects, and I think this is what drew me more to the story, and also the fact that the characters in the novels are not finished in a sense. But what I mean by finished is that they're not well dressed. They're not, like completely clean in a sense. So these things add so much creative variety to when
Mhm.
you are, in the process of creating the character. And I found that fun.
Okay, thank you very much.
May I make an observation and then perhaps invite Dalia to respond with some thought? It did strike me as I was involved in the process of evolving the characters that of the three characters, I think there was June, there was Mara, and Martina, and through the process of submitting some design to us and our response and then modifying, it did seem to me that my own character June, um, you got straight away, and it was like, wow, we got it, fine, perfect. I'm inclined to think it's my own natural talent and ability that was just so convincing that, whereas the other two characters, seem to have to go through a number of iterations of development processes. But putting that to one side as a possibility, um, how did you find that process of speaking with the writers and the different feedback you got?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, Dune is the most character that I enjoyed designing. Well, simply because, the character is such a strong character. And these much of, strong characters really draw me in. Because like I'm a hardcore gamer as well, and whenever I see a game that has either a female lead or a male lead, but they're like strong and not just physically strong, but also smart, it does draw me in. So when I first read the brief about Dune, I was drawn in mostly because of the rugged and strong feeling that this character has. And this is why, like in the process, like later I can show you, of course, how the character ended up as. Um, Even the outfit is also designed to reflect the personality of Dune. And I don't know, like Dune seems wild. She seems also composed at sometimes, but also strong. So strong characters, I really enjoy designing them, basically.
I must say, to represent the other two writers fully here, that their characters are engaging and magnetizing in their own way, and they're absolutely brilliant reads.
Of
And I'm
course.
sure the visuals. It took a little longer for the two characters, but they're equally astonishing. And I've been so amazed at what you've done with all three characters, Dalia. There was some debate around aspects of the characters. I remember things such as hair and skin color
Mhm.
at one point, but I'm not sure how we should proceed. Whether you want to go to the mood boards, which you mentioned, or the character designs, visuals, or whether you want to go in another way. I think we agreed just prior to going live on air that will be driven by you, Dalia. So you tell us which way you want to go.
Okay, I could like walk you guys through the mood board and inspiration first of the world, and then I could show you all the characters, and probably you can like ask me any questions that you want when it comes to the characters or even the mood board.
It would be
Okay?
lovely to see. Thank you.
Okay. So when it comes to characters, at first we wanted to go for something unclean, as I have mentioned before, something in a post-apocalyptic world in a way, whereas the clothes are not so finished. They're using everything based on what they're, using from everyday life, and also we have the antagonists as well that are representing the extremism at some point. So I tried first to, before we got into the characters and before I even had a complete visual of how the characters are gonna look like, I had to do some research when it comes to the outfits, because outfits are a very important asset for character design, especially for video games. The more complex the character is, the more complex the outfit is, and the more simple, of course, the simple the outfit is. And both of them really translate in their own way. So in this world that I was tasked to visualize, I have thought that the clothes need to be a little bit simplified, mainly because it's a video game, and it differs when it comes to the overall um, sense in a way, where you have like extremely complicated clothes and outfit. It might not translate well when you're playing or when the character is playable. But when you have a more simplified outfit, it's easy for this character to move and like to do some, for example, action shots, jump around, like maybe, crawl and so on, so on. So we had to do this decision at first whether the characters are going to be able to jump and parkour probably or something. So it always has to, reflect in the outfit. We have also decided to or have a conversation about how the inmates are supposed to look inside
Mhm.
the camps where they are kind of like, this was first a pitch of how the characters might look like. They might have probably similar outfits, but everyone might change the outfit according to their own personality. This was another idea. And then we all like collectively agreed on doing something similar to this when it comes to like clothes that are ragged in a way, not so clean, not so formal, and so on. We tried to study if they could have armor plates, maybe, or if they can afford basically armor plates, because in the world each character acts differently. And we also tried to brainstorm a little bit the character, but more of the personality of the characters. So here, for example, we have a very strong character that looks really scary. So we were thinking if the antagonists in the story should be scary, or they should be powerful, or smart, or probably, like crazy in a sense. So it all depends on what our discussions were at the end. Even more outfit designs. I have tried to focus more on how the clothes look unclean and probably cut at some areas to show that they have been through a lot, in a sense. And of course, like mainly fashion inspiration to know how the characters are gonna look like. So in the stories, of course. We have the mechanical elements as well, which are the drones. So the drones are the mostly machines that follow the main characters throughout the story, and they pose a threat at some point. So we also tried to study how the drones would look like. Are they going to be bulky? Are they going to fly? Maybe are they going to be able to walk on the ground, or on wheels? To be able to be driven by some remote, like all of these discussions happened. Of course, like different silhouettes and different shapes for the drones. We have tried to experiment with these. Now, all of these are just inspirations shown or taken from other artists, so we can just see how the general overview is going to look like. And then once we have decided on how the drones are supposed to look like, I just wrote down the notes, prepared them so we can develop them, of course, later. So when it comes to landscapes or the general vibe or ambience of the game, we have thought that it should be very gritty, dark at some point, not very formal or not casual even, but mostly super dark. So we have thought of probably like Tokyo is very famous for neon lights, like also dark nights and also neon lights that contrast well. So
Mhm.
visually, it might look really appealing. And we have also collected like uh, pictures from abandoned places and abandoned camps, because this is, by the way, a personal thing. I have a huge thing for abandoned places. And when we were talking and, brainstorming how the looks or the vibes are going to be with the game, and we came up with the term, abandoned places, my eyes just lit up. I love abandoned places. So I have collected several pictures for these abandoned areas because they kind of give a little bit of a gritty feel to how this game is going to end up looking like, especially when it comes to the camps. And something about like these abandoned places that we see here gives a very beautiful mystery going on, and also a story. So the trick here, why we decided on going for as an inspiration, of course, like elements from abandoned places, is that when you look at an abandoned place, all that you think about is what happened to that place. So you have a story going on. If I
Mhm.
see an abandoned, let's say like an abandoned prison, okay, the first thing I will ask is what happened. So it would have been abandoned, and then my mind here would go all crazy, with, with all the creative rush, coming up with all those stories, like what if this happened or what if that happened. So these are always interesting to choose from. And from the novels, honestly, they proved that they really fit into this general aesthetic. And of course, we have, like, before we moved on with the characters, we had to discuss how the gameplay is going to be. Because gameplays, as well, like, video games are very, very different than each other. You have platformers, which are just mainly, like a side view of the character, and the character is just moving from one level to another. You have 3D games, AAA games, which are like the heavy duty games, which require so much textures and so much graphics and so much details, even in the character, and so many poses and movement of the character. So your character could parkour, and your character could even walk normally. So that differs. You also have point and click games, which is also another type of game. It's more related to storytelling, and of course, you have games which we have decided at the end that it could be something similar to this, a little bit of top view. The character could be like a small character running around a really big landscape, which gave us more freedom with creating the world. The characters were indeed important, but the focus here was of the world, because
Mhm.
the how the world has ended up as, and where they are, and having to illustrate a world that is this gritty and scary at some sense, okay, because it's like threatening in a way. You have so much variety of elements you can add, especially if you choose the camera to be a top view angle, and you have, the character moving around in a really scary landscape in a sense. So we also got inspired as well from these games, which are kind of close to puzzle games, where you, for example, have to go from one place to another, turn on some gears so the gate would open or a door would open. Like
Yeah.
there are some brain work going on when you're playing the game, and it's not just about skill, not just like me being able to defeat this character and just be done. No, you have to actually think and improvise about how you are escaping this particular scenario. So we thought that puzzle-driven games are the way to go. Um, well, of course, something like these, the graphical elements or the quality of the graphics, like they could be something very, they could be pushed, because the more details that you have in your background, the more you can pull your story, of course, together. And of course, these examples. Now, moving on to characters. This is officially my favorite character. I really like how Dune turned out to be. Of course, you notice that there are some changes when it comes to the skin color or the outfit. How is the character, acting in a way when it comes to, like, if the character is hiding from someone, what would this character do? Would the character just put like a hoodie on top, or a piece of cloth, or whatever? Like, it all differs. And I really enjoyed this one, because mainly because of the wild hair. I
Mhm.
really like wild hair, and the poofy jacket. It
Mhm.
just seemed to fit perfectly this character, because like this poofy jacket includes many pockets, which is something us girls really want in life. Our jackets with pockets that work. So when I design any character, whether it's a male or a female, the character, the jackets always should include pockets that work. Because when you're in a situation just like that, you need those, to put in all the items or elements that you need to survive. So this was one example of how we approached the first character. Um, as a main inspiration, we have tried to include some details in the character, like torn clothes to show that this character has been through a lot, like not just this preppy or this character in a high position. No, they have been through a lot. And of course, the embedded chip also on the head, which was also a main essential part of the story. So moving on to another character. So in total, we have done 3 characters for now. We move on to another character, which to me looked like more of a sweeter tone, like calmer vibes in a sense, and especially it represents that essence through the outfit and through the clothes. For example, if you compare this character with the first, you notice that the use of black color usually shows sadness. And this sadness is portrayed according to, of course, the background story that this character has been provided with. So if a sad character has a sad background story, of course, you're not going to design them, with happy colors or light colors. They're always going to prefer wearing black to hide, basically, from people, or to hide from experiences, not necessarily people. So the color also affects the personality of the character that's supposed to be designed. And finally, the last character, which was something I personally have not done before, but I
Mhm.
found that so enjoying when it comes to, like, just letting go with the creative possibilities of a character. So this character is supposed to be a transgendered character, where there is a mix between the feminine dresses and also the hardcore jackets, in a sense, that could show both worlds in a way. And I found that really amazing, because when I was creating this character, it did go into lots of changes, by the way. But the process was entertaining in a sense, because every time the character was, open for discussion, and we were like discussing how this character would end up looking like. Um, I have always tried to avoid a little bit to have the, incredibly feminine touch, because
Mhm.
if you think about it realistically, in a world that is difficult, in a world that is cruel and post-apocalyptic, it's not going to be a very, fancy character, or a super feminine character, sorry, who takes care of themselves often. So there's always this gritty factor going on with the characters, and this is why we have chosen to stick to the bandages that were wrapped around even the legs and the arms, to show also that these characters have been through a lot. So these are like a summary of how we have discussed the characters, how much we have went back and forth. The personality of these characters were entertaining because they were different. They were not similar. Each character had their own separate personality, and that showed through the clothes. First character is strong. The second character has more of a sad background story, and the third character is also a feminine character, but also, like, they can jump around, they can do stunts, and so on, so on. So not necessarily the super feminine type. So all of these differences in personalities were super enjoying to experiment with. And this is what we have come up with so far when it comes to the characters.
I think I'm in agreement with you because as far as the visual representation is concerned, I think Dune is my favorite character as well. I love the pockets. I love the puffy jacket, generally speaking. But of course, all of them fantastically designed. Goes without saying. I'm sure anyone could see that. And thank you for sharing them with us, truly.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
There are a number of questions that have come in, and I wonder if Leia, would you like to pick up one of them and present to Dalia? If,
I'm not sure where I can see the comments.
Yeah, it doesn't show for
okay,
me.
no worries. Um, I think that we have had a question that asks about the, well, staying with the flow of gender, the representation of women in gaming and how that is reflected in Bullet. Do you have any thoughts on that, Dalia?
Okay, first off, the amount of diversity that was introduced in this world is honestly a phenomenal step because not so many video games nowadays are going for this step, if you might say. Um, lately or most video games have been going around the classic character, the character that we all know. It's either the very strong female lead or the very strong male lead, so there's no kind of diversity going on. And what really I do not like, like what I don't like about recent video games is that when they want to include a character of diversity, whether it's gender or race or sexual orientation or anything, they're usually not main characters. And I don't like that in video games because I believe personally that everyone should have a chance of representation. And having that to not show much in video games it's kind of sad in a sense. So when I was introduced to the story and I've seen this much diversity when it comes to color, culture, race, and sexual orientation or anything, it was enjoyable. It was something new that I personally did not expect because I have been used to seeing what I've been seeing in video games. So it was like this refreshing take on video games, and I really hope that later on video games would take this approach, because most video games, I mean, if we're going to be like super honest with each other right here, most video games take the safe side, the safe road in a sense. They don't like to include this much diversity in a character. There's only one character that is the main character, and the diversity aspect in other characters are usually secondary, or like the characters that help the main character to achieve his or her goal. And that is usually a weak point in video games. Nowadays, I believe personally that it will change later on. But having to be introduced to this much diversity, whether it's anything, through these three stories is something really interesting and genuinely I really enjoy experimenting with.
That's
Yeah,
brilliant. Sorry, you go ahead, Mister.
I was just reflecting briefly. My only anecdote. I promise not to do too many anecdotes, so this is just one very short one. I was with a friend. She's a white woman in England, and she has a son. He's about 15, 16, a white young man. And I was showing him some of the work you'd done, Dalia, and the visuals. And he said, "It's about time, Pete. There's never any black people in the video games," and it was like, at that level, he's not researching these matters. He just plays the games, and he thinks it's about time too. So I think we're doing a marvelous thing here in pushing on. But there is that question that also arose around cultural representation and about how well, let me present it as a statement, but you can convert it into a question. I always feel that if I'm collaborating with someone, I want some of their creative energy to enter into the the thing we're creating, the work that we're doing. And so I kind of enjoy and expect that some element of the creative, the other creative people's zest and style and sense of understanding of the world enters into the game. And do you think that has been the case? I know Sam was talking about the being faithful to the character. I'm like, please don't worry. You get a better version of the character, or you can innovate something, or you think you can bring something new that based on where you are in Beirut or elsewhere. Then I've always felt, yeah, go ahead, do that. Let's see how that works.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Was that a question?
Yeah, it was. Well, yeah, when it comes to mainly personal creative freedom, if I have something specific in front of me, just like the stories that I have been introduced to, even though you have, like, from our meetings, from our many meetings, you have specifically discussed with me and tried to visualize or conceptualize how the character is going to look like. You still did give me creative freedom when it comes to when I say accessories. Like, for example, coming from Lebanon, Beirut, when you talk about post-apocalypse, situations, we all have an idea what is a post-apocalyptic situation in Lebanon, Beirut, and especially since 2020. So I kind of have a background idea of what goes on and how do the places look like and how does a person react, or what does a person need, okay, in a post-apocalyptic situation. So uh, when I have tried to add my own personal touch, it was just mainly something very simple. I tried not to overdo it. In a sense, I only was translating it visually, but I definitely did add more elements when it comes to accessories. Like, for example, okay, we have the Dune character. The big pouches that were placed on the jacket shows that Dune could carry so many items, okay, in a world that is unforgiving in a sense. So in the book, Dune is a strong character, really. But coming from Lebanon, Beirut, and understanding how a situation like that would be, like, I would not imagine it entirely, of course. Like, we're not, in a zombie apocalypse just yet, I
Not yet.
believe. Just yet. But I do have background information on how it might go. So creative freedom does come when it revolves around, like, small accessories or small items that could be used for something else. So I believe that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Sam, I jumped in, and Leia, I didn't quite allow you to speak before. Yeah, but please ask your questions.
No, it's fantastic insight. No, thank you for asking it. But if you wouldn't mind, I would have a question to ask both you, Mr. Kalu, and you, Ms. Khodor. It's about the same thing, but from two different sides. Concerning gamification and turning your art into a game, you mentioned, Ms. Khodor, that you couldn't complicate things too much. You couldn't put too much
Mm,
details on characters for the express purpose. Well, first of all, the narrative requires it, but also the fact that you're in a game. There's a budget,
mhm.
there's a deadline, there's
Sure.
not a lot of room to make every single grain of sand as detailed as possible.
Mhm.
In that regard, though, both narratively, Mr. Kalu, and graphically, do you see that as a hindrance? Is your conforming of your art to a game something that you feel is a creative block, or is it more of an inspirational way to get really creative with how you can circumvent the limitations of a game
Mm.
engine?
Not really. It's not much of a challenge. It's not difficult, if I may word it better. It's not
Hmm.
this difficult when I have to design a character based on a specific budget or a specific time frame or a timeline. I mean, at the end, we are character designers and we still have to adapt to what is given to us and what is provided to us. So in the game, the characters, the outfits, if you see here, they're not complicated. They're super
Hmm.
simple. That was mainly for the one sole purpose of the gameplay. When we have decided on the gameplay that it's supposed to be, the camera is supposed to be on top view, and there's going to be a focal point on the landscape more than the characters themselves. And the characters are going to appear, as a tiny size and compared to the landscape when it comes to the camera angle. So there was no need to add this much details, because if you're sending a character sheet that is very detailed to a 3D artist who is going to sculpt your character and rig your character, if I'm going to put this little, button somewhere on the outfit, the 3D artist is going to add this button. And when you look at it from a game perspective, like, I mean, mechanics of the game, if the character is going to be from top view, the button's not going to show at all. So it's going to be something totally useless. And it's going to take up the 3D artist's time for something that, he doesn't have to do. So it all depends, really. When it comes to freedom, I personally do not mind. I mean, it's our job at the end to adapt to every single narrative game mechanic, game direction, and even budget. So it's kind of like a very normal process for character designers to go through.
I see. Thank you. And what about you, Mr. Khalid? Do you feel like your novel is narratively limited by the world, the fact that it has to be adapted to a video game, or do you feel like the fact that there is already a world that it is a part of is a narrative driving force?
Well, first of all, I really enjoyed the process of moving from the novel to the game. And I think that one of the reasons that I enjoyed that is that I'm not attached to the novel as a fixed block of text and ideas that is immutable, you know. And so indeed, even as Dalia has been speaking, I've been writing some key words down for if I ever write another novel that becomes a game. You know, I've written down action. You know, we have our characters move, but we don't think, you know, intently about it. It's just part of the flow of describing a character. But now I realize action, how a character moves, becomes quite important in games. Outfits, you know, sometimes we're quite casual with how we dress characters in novels, you know, and again, it might not be uppermost in our minds, but that is a key concept, or a recurring concept that has turned up. And so you see, there are other instances where the game actually makes us focus as writers on certain aspects of the novel that we're doing, but also it allows us to play with adding things to the novel that will thicken the novel itself. So the game actually can feed the novel.
Exactly.
In Melvin's case, you know, the novel is at the printer, so it's gone off. In my case, it's I think I'm just finishing the last draft now. I hope it's the last draft. Depends on my editor. But it's intriguing. The development of the story world and many of the much of the research that we did around the background, the apocalyptic vision for the camp, much of that started to seep back into the novel from the game. As I was doing the second draft, and you know, my editor saying, "Well, we can't see that. What does it look like?" I thought, "Wait a minute." We've done some more research, and I was part of the game. I can actually add part of the game into the novel here, you know. So that's what that there's been a kind of reciprocation, you know, a recursive, a flow of ideas backwards and forwards. And so, yeah, by not having a fixed idea of what the novel is and how the character should be represented, I've really grown as a writer myself for the novel. And lastly, that even as I look now at Dune, who is on the screen, I think that the character inspires me to think of other situations they might be in that are not in the novel, and that I could, you know, that look to the right hand side, the panel where they're staring kind of with a certain intensity and a certain determination, and there's a glow of a vision in their eyes. You know, all this is like, wow, you know, I can do more stories now that I've got a vision like that. So it's all good. It's inspiring.
That's really good to hear that there's a lot of reciprocation and like a communal effort, and the fact that though it's in a limited platform in the form of a game, that you guys work with that to inspire each other's work, and that is a really good thing to hear. Thank you for sharing that.
I would invite Leal, if you can you hear me, Leal?
Yes, Mr. Kalu, I actually have a question for you. So you mentioned that you love the fact that the books were turned into a video game. So I want to ask you if you would have loved it, if you would have equally loved it if the books were turned into a movie, which has been very, very popular recently. Like many books have been turned into movies. So how do you feel if Triptych was turned into a movie rather than a video game?
I like. I must say, let me answer not commercially, because of course my view is irrelevant in terms of the commerce. My family would be delighted if I suddenly had $1 million pop into my account as a result of the movie. But putting commerce, finance to one side, I think for me, I have an interest in innovation, in creative innovation. And I see the gaming world as part of a future world that we're heading towards. And gaming is not just restricted to gaming per se, but there are aspects of what we do in gaming that are going to enter into the medical world. They'll enter into almost every other profession. And so it intrigues me and it excites me. And so I would say that right now my preference is for the interactivity and the innovation that it looks set to occur via gaming. And the movie feels more like a non-interactive form at the moment. You know, you can't kind of engage fully and affect the action. That said, you know, it has its own aesthetic, and I have written scripts and had a few films produced, small films produced, as has my colleague Tariq Mahmood, who may join us if he can. But yeah, so movies, yes, I love the idea, but at the moment I'm too excited by the gaming to drift into writing a film script.
Awesome, great. I'm excited to see the game as well.
We have a question sent in by Ashraf to Ms. Khodor, if you'd be willing to answer it. What kind of games do you like? And have they affected the ways that you draw character and concept art? And is there a specific game that has directed your art style?
Okay, so lots of parts in this specific question. I'll answer the first part. What kind of games do you like? I like every single game. I am obsessed with games. The best games that, the most games that I like. I really enjoy a variety of those, but things that I really enjoy, the Assassin's Creed franchise, all of the parts, they're amazing to me. The Tomb Raider, the new ones, the new three parts for each game were like brilliant. And I do enjoy some horror games every now and then. They do inspire me because they give me an adrenaline rush, and this adrenaline rush is always represented in my characters. It's like, my Red Bull in a sense. If I want to be creative, I should have an adrenaline rush, so I play some horror games. But I enjoy action games where, the parkour and all of that are an important asset to how I enjoy moving a character. When it comes to inspiration, I don't have a specific game that inspired me for my art style. My art style was mainly inspired by animation and not video games. Video games inspire me when it comes to the mood and the colors. When I see a beautiful game like Horizon Zero Dawn, some of the scenes and some of the landscapes are just mind blowing when it comes to colors. So these inspire me when it comes to me choosing the palette of a character. But when it comes to the actual character, animation is more of my inspiration. One thing that I really enjoy in video games that I really love to translate in my characters for video games is a strong character. And strong character, not just by personality or by physically strong in a sense, but smart and being able to get themselves out of sticky situations by using anything that is provided in front of them. So these ways that you have to think when you are playing a video game, especially with the Tomb Raider series, the new ones, I basically enjoy, and they do inspire me when I'm creating characters, and I know technically how can I save this character at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, thank you, Dalia. I'm just being invited to invite Tariq Mahmood back into the studio. So, Dr. Mahmood, are you present? Are you with us? I know your microphone is switched off. Oh, it's on now. Go ahead.
Well, I was enjoying your conversation so much. I felt a bit redundant. So it's very interesting to actually be incapacitated, technologically speaking, and still be able to listen to what you're doing. And now I understand, Dalia, you like horror games as well. And there we go. I too like horror games, especially the American ones. But unfortunately, I'm always on the side of the horror. They're going out into the Latin America to chase a snake that has lived there for centuries and then make a horror film because the snake wants to kill these nasty little Americans who've come out there. Having said that, I've got nothing against the American people. But what I certainly learned from you, and also Pete's humbleness, is that Pete is the artistic director of Common Word. And what for us was really fascinating, all three of you, Leal, Sam, in particular, Dalia, is that we didn't want our characters being illustrated, if you like, in the West where we've set our stories. In a way, our stories are actually inspired by the mayhem that is taking place, particularly in the Levant and much further beyond. And when you touched upon how the actual dystopian life that we live, I am at the moment in Beirut, the dystopian life of people in Lebanon with a never ending stream of what can possibly go wrong. And that filters through in all of our lives. So, in that sense, what I found really fascinating by this discussion and all your artwork is, in a way, that the novelist, the filmmaker, the game designer, and the visual artist, we all share a couple of common denominators, and that is that our characters must have three dimensions, multi-dimensionality. But what I learned from you really was that the interpretation and the detail that you go to in color, especially when I love the way you've got hold of Dune. I think it's my favorite character, and I feel a bit, I know when you've all gone.
Mara will not be happy. Your own character, Mara, you know.
No, I didn't. I
You're still on
particularly, I know what Peter will say when we're in private, and his language is not as poetic as the poet he actually is when he talks to me. But I have two students here. You've got students watching and who will watch. I shall not repeat those words here. But one of the things is really, I think that characters in novels, and they come alive in their own way, and they come alive inside us, and a little bit of us goes into the characters. So what we're doing, for those who don't know, we are in the development process of Dalia had an enormous job trying to condense three massive narratives, three novels, perhaps 250,000 words in the breadth of the story, into three characters, and create some sort of settings in which they'll work. And we ourselves are in an experimental stage, and we're really grateful for Falafel Games, who were with us last week, for being able to develop a demo. And post the demo, we hope to show that actually a transnational collaboration with people passionate about themes, about character, it's not only possible but actually very fruitful. So for me, it's an utter honor to have you illustrate our characters and actually engage with us. I didn't want a white character. I just didn't. I'm tired of the white world, but white privilege, not white people, in a sense. And it comes through everything when somebody else represents us, and we wanted to represent ourselves. The darkness behind me is an indication of we've reached 6 o'clock, and it'll be come back on again.
We
So
mixed
I
up
will
the
stop. I will stop at this point. I think, unless if you guys have got a summing comments, but I'd like to thank everyone who's managed to stay with us. I know people will watch us later, and we're trying to get to 100 people subscribers on our YouTube channel. And being as old as Pete, you forget the basic uh, ways of doing the little things. But thank you very much, and we will reassess you for a farewell word from each of you. We will reassess this, and clearly there's a need to go into character and environment in a much more deeper level. And your students must be so lucky to have you as a teacher, Dalia. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Leal and Sam and Pete. These are my last words, and I'll leave you to the other four.
Okay, I will quickly say thank you for spending this creative time with me and exploring the possibilities of the work that we're doing. It's been rewarding and nourishing. It keeps me motivated to keep on. So yeah, that's brief by my thank you to you all three of you. I'm sorry.
Well,
Go ahead.
my final statement would be thank you for this. I really enjoyed talking to you. Sam and Layal, you did also an amazing job. Really proud. And thank you for this opportunity. It was really fun.
I just want to say that I really appreciate the impact you guys are having on the industry. I love to see games like these. I love to see them in this kind of art style, and I'm really happy that this kind of collaboration is in full force. And I hope to see something beautiful come out of it soon. Thank you for coming with us, coming to talk to us, and I really appreciate giving us your time.
Thank you.
I just want to say I'm absolutely amazed at the work that you've showed us today. Like, I'm just amazed about at the amount of creativity and how you managed to bring everything into life, and it shows how much work you put into your art. And I would love to be one of your students one day. And yeah, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.